Welcome to the Videography University podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you have ambitions of turning your videography business into a six-figure income and a full-time career. My name is Grant Burks, and I'm the host of this podcast. I run my own video production business called Optiko Productions based out of Columbus, Ohio, and I'm also the author of a book called Film to Freedom, where I teach all the tools, strategies, and tactics to turn your videography business into a six-figure income and full-time career. So on today's episode, we're going to be talking about how you know if you're ready to go full-time with your videography business. So before we even start the episode, I want to add the caveat that obviously this is going to be dependent on person to person. It's going to be specific to your unique situation. And before you make any big decisions in life, you should consult with the people that you know and trust and respect. Also, I should add the caveat that this is not me giving you advice on any financial or legal decisions. Those all fall under your own jurisdiction. You should consult with a professional before making any of those decisions. I think I've touched all my bases at this point. I'm simply going to share with you my experience and the rules that I applied to myself when making the decision to go full-time with my videography business. Let's see, I went full-time with my videography business when I was, I think, 23. I was fresh out of college. I was working a 9-to-5 at a company. It was a healthcare IT company. The company was a great company. They had great benefits, and the culture was fun. We had all of our medical benefits paid for, all of our premiums. We just had our deductible. 401k match was great. We got unlimited PTO, which is, I think, not really. I've never found that unlimited PTO truly means unlimited PTO. In this situation, I think unlimited PTO meant the people that didn't really want to work ended up taking as much time as they wanted to off, and the people that actually were hard workers felt bad about taking time off, so they didn't really take time off. But whatever the case may be, I have my own thoughts on that. But we had pool tables in the building. We had free lunches covered by the company every day, which was amazing. I mean, it was the dream company for so many people. And my friends and family, they thought it was ridiculous when I told them everything that was going on at the company. They're like, that sounds too good to be true. It sounds amazing. And it was. And for a lot of people, they loved working there. But for me, I just didn't feel fulfilled in the work that I was doing. And I felt like I was meant for something more than working a typical 9-to-5 job. I had ambitions and dreams of building my own business and doing something that I truly loved, and videography was that thing. So I was doing video work on the side. I was doing videography work for clients on the side. So at this time, I had started taking videography more seriously again, and was starting to book quite a few projects on the side through my business. And I was working weeknights, weekends, fulfilling on these different projects. It was a mix between weddings, corporate work, and then real estate photography and videography. And things were really starting to grow, and I was starting to pick up a lot of momentum with my business. All of a sudden, after a few months, I was making a pretty substantial amount of money. The first year that I ran my videography business, I made $16,000 on the side while I was working my 9-to-5, which was a nice little chunk of change on the side. But it didn't feel like something that was substantial enough to where I could see myself in the very near future going full time with it. I knew that I needed to build it up a little bit more. So at that point, I set out some goals for myself. I had two goals that I wanted to achieve before I was going to leave my 9-to-5 to do videography full time. One, I wanted to save up at least a year's worth of my salary through videography work. So at that time, I was making around $55,000 at my 9-to-5. So I wanted to save up roughly $55,000 in videography work. So just from the projects that I was doing through my videography business part-time. I wanted to set that aside in a bank account. That way I knew if not a single project came in for a year, I could take that money from my business account and I could pay it into mine and my wife's personal bank accounts. And I wouldn't have to be stressed about worrying that I couldn't, help contribute toward our groceries and our housing and all of our just daily expenses. So I wanted to be able to have the peace of mind knowing that I had a year's worth of my salary saved up and I could pay that out for a year without a single project coming through. I figure the odds of not a single project coming through within the span of a year were very low. It seemed like a pretty conservative way for me to gauge my savings before I went full time. So that was the first guideline that I set for myself. The first benchmark that I set for myself, I should say. The second benchmark that I had is that I wanted to be making at least 75% of my salary for a rolling 6-month period of time just from videography work. So through 6 months, I was making roughly $25,000, a little bit more from my 9-to-5. So I wanted to be making roughly 75% of that through a rolling 6-month period of time. If I could do that, then if you take that 6 months and you multiply it by 2 for a full year, then at that point I'd be making about 75% of my salary from my 9-to-5. And I figured if I can make 75% of my salary from my 9-to-5, and I am doing that part-time while working 40 hours per week at my full-time job, then I should be able to make at least what I was making at my full-time job when I am spending 40 hours plus per week putting that toward my videography business. So those were my two benchmarks that I set for myself. One, I had to save up a year's worth of my salary from videography work alone. And then 2, I needed to be making at least 75% of my salary for a rolling 6-month period of time. Now, fast forward a little bit, projects kept building up. I kept booking more projects, getting new clients, and eventually spring of, I think it was roughly 2 years that I was working at that company for, I had gotten my largest project to date, $12,000 project, and at that point I had saved, I think, roughly $60,000 in my business account from videography work, and I was making I think I was almost matching what my salary was through a 6-month period of time. So at that point, I knew it was time for me to make the jump to go full time. And it was the best decision that I ever made in my life. I remember walking out of the building, my work, the place of work that I was at for the last time on my last day. I walked out and I just felt like I was a free man finally. It's kind of corny to say, but I felt like I was almost like this prisoner when I was working 9-to-5. I had to report to my boss at all times, and my boss was great. They were super lenient, but I still just had this nagging thought in the back of my head that I always needed to be available for my boss at all times. I couldn't take time off when I wanted to. And then I walked out of that building, and all of a sudden, I didn't have anybody that I had to report to. I was my own boss. I could take time off when I wanted to. It's not like I needed to be reporting to somebody at all times. In addition to that, and maybe the point that I was most excited about, I had uncapped earning potential. I could work as hard as I wanted to and make as much as I wanted to based on the work that I was willing to put in. When working at my previous 9-to-5, didn't matter how hard I worked. I could work twice as hard as the person sitting next to me. I would be making the same amount of money as them at the end of the day. So being in a position to where now I controlled how much money I was making was this incredible feeling. And it was just the best feeling, one of the best feelings of my entire life. So at this point, roughly 4 years later or so, I'm excited to say that it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made in my life. I left the company. I was making, by the time I left, I was making roughly about $65,000 a year. And we're on pace to do about $320,000 in revenue this year through my videography business. On top of that, I've been able to take trips whenever I want to. I've gone on more vacations than I could ever have imagined within a year. And it's been an amazing, amazing experience. And I'm so happy that I made the decision that I made. So my experience, the guidelines I set for myself, those two things I would say is when I knew I was able to go full time with my videography business. One, when I had saved up a year's worth of my salary, and two, when I was making roughly 75% of my salary over a 6-month period of time. Now, I personally think, looking back, that was probably a little bit of overkill. It was probably more conservative than I needed to be. Could I do it again? Or if I could do it again, I would probably say I would only need to save up roughly half of my salary, because I never even really tapped into that buffer at all. And in addition to that, I would say I probably only needed to be making about 50% as opposed to 75% of my salary over a rolling 6-month period of time. I'm grateful that I was conservative with it as opposed to being, risky with it. But looking back, I think I could have been a little bit less cautious and probably could have made the jump a little bit quicker. So that is when I knew that I was at a point to where I could go full time with my videography business. Once again, your situation is going to be unique to yourself, but maybe consider those guidelines that I set for myself and see if that feels like a good benchmark for yourself as well. Now, if you want to hear any other tips, strategies, tactics for turning your videography business into a full-time income or 6-figure income and full-time career, then pick up a free copy of my book in the link in the description below. That's right, I am giving you a completely free copy of my book just for listening to this podcast. I want to help 1,000 aspiring videographers go full-time with their videography business. So I hope that you can be that next one. So pick up a free copy of my book in the description below. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.